Good morning. I have 3 things to say, and so to break it up, I'm going to change my attire each time so that you can keep track and separate what I'm saying. So be ready for that. So, my name is Alice Martin, and in this role, I am a member of this congregation. We welcome all to our service. Unitarian Universalism encourages an open-ended search for meaning in life and a commitment to asking our values to shape our actions. We are a pluralistic religion that draws wisdom from many sources. We welcome all people into our beloved community of whatever age, race, class, ethnicity, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious background. We especially welcome those of you who may be worshiping with us for the first time, and hopefully not the last. Due to ongoing COVID-19 strategies, we are not having our normal coffee hour after the service. But soon, hopefully we're eking toward that. But check our calendar and newsletter as well for announcements of programs and events. Guests are welcome to participate in any activities in our community. If you would like more information about the congregation or if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask Reverend Jay. Thank you. Okay, pay attention. I took from my car this morning. We have, throughout the course of since June, I'm now Alice Martin, a member of the Board of Trustees. We have been short a few board members, and I am pleased to announce that we are now up to 6 as to our designated 7, with the addition of Miriam Andrews Ullman, who has accepted and was at her first board meeting last February. So let's hear it from Miriam, wherever you are. I also want to hats off to LDC, who really works diligently to try to fulfill these positions. And so hats off to them, and an applause as well. Okay, now I am Alice Martin, chairperson of the Board of Trustees. So, in our promise of this board to be totally transparent and communicate. It's difficult to find ways that we can communicate with everyone through the newsletter or realm that hasn't quite taken off yet. So we are going to have a town hall. And this town hall will be March 20th, Sunday after the service. And it'll be a multi-platform meeting with Zoom and in gathering. That almost sounded like, well, you know what it sounded like. So the discussion item for that town hall will be our finances of this congregation. It will be a brainstorming session and a briefing on where we are with our finances, understanding that we've come out of a 2-year and still in a time that's really limited a lot of participation and resources. So we'd like to brainstorm ideas of potential sources of revenue for our congregation other than pledges. But this is a reminder that we are entering into a pledge stage through the stewardship. So, get the checkbooks out, and this is what you get to be here with us. So we thank you all, and I am now just Alice.
Thank you, Alice, for the many hats that you wear in this congregation. I will not be changing outfits during this service. I just want to forewarn everybody about that. Although, you see some of these quick change artists, it's really very interesting how they do that. So our opening words today, and welcome. I'm Reverend Jay Wolin. It is great to be here with all of you today. Our opening words today are from Reverend Byron Tyler Coles, and it's entitled Love Made Known. In the midst of the hardest days, shaped by the most tedious of moments, when the heart breaks open and the spirit is weary, speak to me of love. When the earth cries out in despair under the weight of trash and debris, choking on poisonous plumes and darkened dust, speak to me of love. When bodies are rejected, dejected, and subjugated by fear, misunderstanding, and a sheer lack of imagination, speak to me of love. When humanity is ensnared by a virus deadly and individual rights are lauded as supreme, speak to me of love. When in a suspected and supposed democracy where all are equal and the ability to vote is a right, yet we make false idols of procedures and tainted halls, speak to me then of love. When people of U's vast and varied riches of cosmos are criminalized, brutalized, and theorized, speak to me then of love. In the midst of the hardest days, shaped by the most tedious of moments, when the heart breaks open in the spirit and the spirit is weary, lament, dear ones, without apology, for this is all too much to bear. What is love in a moment such as this? Love is a force which drives and sustains us through wilderness valley to the mountaintop. It is the force behind the plow that gives force, abundant nutrients, and sustenance. It is the force that builds and makes things new. It is the force that shields us and fills us with truths and resiliency. Love is indeed an action. It is the reality of relationality, of mutuality. It calls us to a space of transformation betwixt and between, all while tearing desires for perfection, and its grace be known for all of us. Love, lament, and reveal, dear ones. For from the impossible to the real, to the here and to the now, to the love which binds the world together, may love be known here. With that thought in our mind, let us light our chalice. The words will be up on the screen. Please join me in saying those words. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to inspire.
Hi, I'm Diane Hammerand, a member of this congregation. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country on which our congregation's grounds are located, the Kickapoo, Peoria, Sauk, and Meskwaki, Miamiaki, and Osheti-Shakawan, and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Please rise in body and our spirit for our opening hymn, Answering the Call of Love. The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Boldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. We are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
And thank you, Harrington family, for helping me keep the beat on that. I appreciate that. The UUA has this wonderful program called the Side with Love campaign. Their website indicates, and I quote, "We want to harness love's power to stop oppression, exclusion, and violence," end quote. And Ashley Horan, the organizing director for Side with Love, writes, and I quote, "Our faith aspires to build a different kind of world. At its best, Unitarian Universalism gracefully holds at its center a reverence for both the individual and the collective. Our congregation's covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, alongside respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part. End quote. In practice, this means working for a world in which individual freedoms are in balance with collective thriving. That's the end of the quote. So it's a both and, not just for ourselves, but ourselves and everyone else. None of us are free until all of us are free. How we balance this question of differing values is something we've been talking about in our adult religious education class on Wednesday night about rethinking the principles and sources as an association. And it's very hard when our values conflict, honestly, such as whether that is the value of curiosity and freedom of thought conflicting with our value of covenant, especially our covenant of right relations, right? How the words we freely say, right, might break our covenant by harming others. Our values of nonviolence and our commitment to justice. In our country, we pride ourselves as being a people of law. Right? We know, and I talked a bit about this last week, if you were here, there have been many laws in our country that have both intentionally and unintentionally harmed certain segments of our society more than others. So we have to ask, a people of law for whom? For Unitarian Universalism, that means everyone. Now, I was recently reading a story about a gentleman named Varian Fry. Now, he was the first of 5 Americans to be named righteous among the nations, an honor given by the state of Israel to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. And by the way, the second and third Americans to be given that designation were one of our former ministers, Waitstill Sharp, and his wife, Martha Sharp. But Fry headed the Emergency Rescue Committee, which was started by Eleanor Roosevelt at the time, which provided visas for famous writers, artists, musicians, politicians who were in danger of being murdered by the Nazis. And I admit, Fry seemed to relish being in this role of hobnobbing with the famous and creative people, but he also realized there were many others who would never escape. He published a scathing article in 1942 titled "The Massacre of the Jews in Europe," trying to encourage the United States to loosen up our immigration policy to save people's lives. He ends the article, "This is a challenge which we must not ignore." And yet we did ignore it, right? We tried to claim ignorance about the death camps. Considering the acceleration of the murders at the concentration camps towards the end of the war, we could have saved so many more people if we had acted with love as a country. And not just artists and important people, right? Just people, everyday people. We could have saved them, and we chose not to. We delayed and delayed getting into the war because Americans just didn't want to believe it could affect us. Yet since World War II, we've entered other wars, some righteous, others under circumstances that in retrospect seem coerced for our own imperialistic aims. And yes, we're tired after 20 years of war in Afghanistan. And yes, there is a threat of nuclear war. All of this is true. And as well, there are people we can help. People who are putting their lives on the line fighting for their freedom. not just the rich, right, or the especially talented ones, but everyone, everyone, and not just here, but everywhere. Love demands that of us, to act before millions die, to prevent millions from dying. This is the challenge which we cannot, must not ignore. And if we are to live out our values in the world, it is true we can be more effective locally, and we should, first just with ourselves, right? Find peace with ourselves and justice with ourselves, with our congregation, and for all Quad Cityans, but we cannot stop there. Love demands that we act for all Iowans, for all Americans, for all humanity, and for the planet itself. Our principles call us to affirm and promote the goal of world community, right? With peace, liberty, and justice for all. Not just our little piece of the world, but the entire world. Are the Ukrainians who are suffering today any less valuable as human beings than any of us? Are those Russian protesters who are arrested? I mean, think about the courage it takes knowing you could end up spending years in the gulag and still going out and protesting for peace. Are they any less valuable than any of us? Peace, liberty, and justice for all. Not for some, for all. And those three are not mutually exclusive. You cannot have peace without liberty and justice for all. Our sources challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. In thinking about love and the events in the world this week, it really made me take pause. How does the power of love work? Yes, love is a power. I do believe that. But also, so is fear and hatred. What does love made known mean in the real world? When forces of fear and hatred rise up and act, what can the power of love do? Yes, do. Right? Recently deceased author and activist Bell Hooks wrote, and I quote, "Most of us think of love as having to do with a feeling of attraction to someone, or whether or not we feel happy with that person. But love really is more of an interactive process, right? It's about what we do, not just about what we feel. It's a verb, not a noun. So many people think that it's enough to say what they feel, even if their actions do not correspond with what they are saying." End quote. Now, the state of Iowa and other states have passed laws that will cause harm to our LGBTQ and specifically to our trans siblings. That is the power of fear and hate rising up. What will love do? We have seen laws passed to restrict voting rights that disproportionately impacts communities of color. That is fear and hate rising up. What will love do? We have seen laws passed that will prevent the teaching of racism and the history of racism in our country. That is fear and hate rising up, and I ask you, what will love do? We have seen the people of Ukraine viciously bombed and attacked by Russian troops at the order of Vladimir Putin. That is fear and hate rising up, and I have to ask, what will love do? It's easy to say we just need to spread love and share the value of love, and over time it will lead to the end of war. But we also have to ask, what kind of world will we have left if we wait until then? Protestant theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, in his book Love and Justice, he wrote this after World War II, it has since become quite apparent that the tyranny would have conquered the world if the material resources of civilization had not been organized and harnessed so that force could be met by a superior force. So let us harness this power of love to transform fear and hate. One of the ways that we harness our material resources to help our community is through sharing our offering with an organization chosen by our social justice projects. This month, we will be sharing our collection with Transitions Mental Health, who support the mental health court, diverting people away from jail. Please be as generous as you can. We also invite you to come up and light a candle during this time to mark a joy or sorrow in your personal life. And as well for people online, if you'd like a joy or sorrow to be spoken, please write it into the chat on YouTube. So let this sacred time now begin. Each week when we gather, we share our joys and sorrows, some by lighting candles, some by writing in the book of joys and sorrows, which is at the front of the sanctuary as you enter, and others, we keep it in the silent sanctuaries of our heart, but we all have joys and sorrows. So let us look in the book today. Brian, Tracy, and Stella Tufty have a sorrow that this week they lost their loving dog of 15 years, Willow. So sorry. I know how we love our they become part of our families. And so our deep sorrow goes to you. Tom LaJudas shares the challenges of love are with me this week. So let us all just take a moment of silence and contemplation of the joys and sorrows that we have in our life and of those that we love and know. I'll take us out of the silence with a prayer from the Carmela community, slightly adapted. It is with deep sadness that we pray for peace and for the people of Ukraine. Spirit of life, who sees the weakness in the acts of naked aggression, ground of being who feels the fear in moments of acute helplessness, cure this warring madness, and shield all who fall in harm's way. Leach the poison from the mind that thinks strength is shown in a bullying force. And may an equal strength and solidarity give resolve to those whose aim is to protect and respect, not just the ones we call our own, but all with whom we can share a better, more peaceful world. Blessed be and amen. So first, I do thank you, by the way. That was just beautiful. Woo! I think the microphone wanted to share as well that it was beautiful. Today at 4 o'clock, if you can, we will be having an interfaith vigil here at the congregation for the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia who are protesting the war. So if you can, and it'll be on Zoom and as well as in person. So I think about the people and the government of Ukraine today, invaded by a foreign power. That has weighed heavy on my mind this week. And I wonder about the power of love. Clearly, the Ukrainians love their country. The courage they have shown in fighting an overwhelming, larger invader is inspiring. So many stories are coming across social media. I have to be honest, it can be obsessive, right? Just like scrolling, wanting to know what the latest news is, and wondering how much of the news is out there is real or wishful thinking or just propaganda from either side. Yeah, in the end, people are dying unnecessarily. Their potential in life is being eliminated. For what? For power, for greed, for ego? It has long been this way with humanity. Aristotle, in his book Politics, defined a just war as never to be an end to itself, but was legitimate when waged under certain circumstances as a form of self-defense to secure an empire or to enslave non-Hellenistic peoples. This is Aristotle, so probably around, 400 BC. The Roman Catholic Church defined the Crusades as a just war. And in World War I, Unitarians in particular took strong positions in favor of the war to the point of actually passing a resolution at General Assembly where the American Unitarian Association voted to deny aid to congregations with ministers that did not support the war. Taft actually was the head of our denomination for president, right? I think I was the last Unitarian president, and he was supportive of the war. Now, it took them 20 years, but 20 years later, they rescinded that proclamation. And it's important to recognize when we have erred, right? And then just as important to take action to change ourselves upon such recognition. Now, World War II certainly gave credence to the concept of the just war. And it seems at times that humanity is going to have to experience something traumatic before we change. It's really sad because we don't have to, right? We can choose something different than violence and war and greed and power, right? We can choose to love, not in an ethereal sense, but with our actions. When I think of what Varian Fry and Waitstill Sharp did going to Europe in World War II, or what many Unitarians did going to Selma to march for voting rights and against racism, and specifically I think of James Reeb and Viola Liuzzo losing their lives. Too often, though, we are silent in the face of danger out of fear or a belief that we are not enough. But we need to remember that we are enough. We need to create a place and a space of love so all can have a place where they know they will be loved. We shouldn't have to fight to be loved. For some, a congregation is prophetic. For others, it is a refuge. It doesn't have to be either or. But it does ask us to love each other and to act with love. Sometimes love requires us to stand up to those who would do us and other loving people harm, whether that be in a congregation or halfway around the world. What are we doing for love? Are we standing up for love in the world, in our state, in our community, in our congregation, in our own life? Are we letting little things, petty differences, personal preferences get in the way of loving our neighbor? Loving your fellow member, even. Take 5 minutes. Call a fellow congregant, maybe one you don't even know, right? But maybe someone you haven't seen in a while, and just say hello and remind them that they are missed. Like any relationship to flourish, love takes effort. In a world that justifies war, we need to put in the effort to side with love. And is why it is so important to intentionally grow our love and our compassion for others. The Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh tells the story that one day the Buddha was holding a bowl of water in his left hand, and then he was holding a handful of salt in the right hand. And he poured the salt into the water and stirred. And he asked the monks, "My dear friends, do you think that you could drink this water?" "No," they said. No, it's too salty. We could not drink that." He goes, "That's right. But if you were to throw that amount of salt into a big river, it wouldn't make the river salty at all. And thousands of people could continue to drink the water in that river." So let us think about how wide our compassion can be. Although I would not drink the water from the Mississippi right now, but it is a wide, big river. And so let our compassion be as wide as the Mississippi River, right? Like a mighty river of love. Right? A mighty river of hope, a mighty river of healing, a mighty river of justice in all that we say and all that we do. Let it be from a large heart of compassion. And like the mighty Mississippi, right, defining the boundaries of our own town, the power of love can define the boundaries of what we consider acceptable behavior in relationships and in world events. Love can change the course of an empire. Love can give courage to those who suffer. Love can change the heart of both petty and powerful tyrants. We just have to act with love in our heart for others. We just have to care more for people, to empathize with others who may be or think differently than we do. As important between ourselves as a covenanted community, to help each other, to learn from each other, to be righteous with each other, to show mercy to each other. For that is what it means to love each other. And isn't that what we want for each other? Isn't that a message that so many people are thirsting for? In fact, I would say that is one reason we come together in community to practice what it means to love ourselves and to love others. Individual, communal, freedom, safety, here, everywhere, prophetic refuge, right? Seeming contradictions, but together, they can bring us wholeness. Despite everything that is going on in the world, the power of love is within our power, right? And it is within the power to share it with others or not. And so I ask, what will you choose? May you choose love for yourselves and for everyone. Let love bind us together. May love be known here. May it be so. I invite you now to rise in body and or spirit for number 159. This is my song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
It's from the road, closing words there from The Road Less Traveled by Dr. M. Scott Peck. Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and an action. Will also implies choice. We do not have to love. We choose to love. May it be so. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice, the words of which will be up on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.